Hasta la vista, baby.
So here we have a bazooka-like box of watches, possibly the first time I've received a box that doesn't fit on this camera. And in here we should have some new watches that are hoping to blow away the competition, or at least shake up the market a bit, because they're offering some pretty good-looking watches at AliExpress rivaling prices. And the brand isn't actually based in China, it's based in the UK. But yeah, let's whip these open and take a closer look. And I'm assuming we've gone with this orientation just because it is a bit more cost effective. And here is the brand in question. It is Sestrian watches. Sestrian meaning from Chester here in the UK. And I know that because I've actually visited their store in person. Yeah, this is the home brand of Watch Nation, who are an authorised watch dealer here in the UK. And this model's been in the works for some time. Oddly, they actually showed me a concept unit of this model, or at least the renderings for it a couple of years ago. They wanted to know my general thoughts on it, albeit it was a bit too late in the development process for my thoughts to have any impact on the design. But yeah, they've sent me 3 different versions of this brand new watch to take a look at. This is their Master Series V3. And I do wonder if the feedback I'll be giving in this video to you guys is going to be quite similar to what I was telling them a couple of years ago. Now, you'll find all these watches affiliate linked in the video description. Now, I only asked to take a look at one specific one, but they've sent in 3. And to my knowledge, these are loan units, so they will be going back. But if that's not the case for any reason, I'll make sure it's updated in the video description. Not actually, even though I've handled a couple of the watches in the flesh, that was only very briefly, and it was a long time ago. And I think when you see the prices on these, you may be a little bit shocked. In a good way, for once. And I can tell you straight away, for the money, this is a very, very well-made watch. And it's funny and quite lucky, this first one I've unboxed is the one that I originally requested to take a look at. This is the green version. And it's not often I lead with the price on this channel, but I'm going to in this case, because this watch with some pretty high-end specs, as I'll mention in a moment, at full price is only £145. And at the time of recording, at least, there's like a newsletter sign-up discount of 15%, at least on desktop, which would bring it down to £123, or about, what's that, 160 USD? And for an automatic watch, especially one that isn't just from AliExpress or something, I think that is a very aggressive price point. And my first impressions with this are that the case finishing is fantastic for the money, especially the polishing here on this bezel and on this rim at the top and bottom. Rather predictable case shape, but yeah, this is extremely competitive case finishing with some of those Chinese brands. It's right up there, maybe actually a fraction better than a lot of them. But before we get into all the specs, let's just take a quick look at which other ones they've sent me here, because I don't know. Not sure they ever said. This is the kind of leatherette packaging you get with these, which again is fairly nice for an affordable brand. This one's quite unusual. Bit of a pale fruity colour, this. And the design with these definitely bears some resemblance to your Oyster Perpetuals, let's say. Different handset for sure, but they're going for that kind of everyday, versatile design. Got a screw-down crown there on these too. So this is the champagne dial. Not quite as saturated in person as it is online, but still looks pretty good. I've never really owned a champagne or ivory dialed watch before, and maybe I need to consider one. That looks quite good. What is this third colour? And this one is probably going to be one of the more popular ones, this being a blue. And blue always tends to sell pretty well with especially the most everyday watch releases. Definitely appears to be the safest of the 3, this one. And in some ways, I think probably my least favourite, actually, of the 3. I think I'd maybe play a bit more risky with a watch like this with an otherwise rather safe design. But yeah, this is the blue one. And all 3 of these have got quite a prominent sunburst, especially in the very centre. So yeah, interesting to take a look at the variety here. But let's go back to the one I originally requested. Yeah, this one's almost like a green-yellow, actually. Has a little hint of it in there, a bit of a khaki colour. This is a 316L stainless steel case, and some of the other specs are written right there on the dial, which I'll give you a close-up of now. We got an automatic movement in here. Now, as you might expect for a watch at this price, this is using one of the more standard Miyota 8000 series movements, the 8215. Yeah, it is an automatic movement at what could be considered quartz rivaling prices. Now, the Miyota 8000 series is okay, but it's not the thinnest movement in the world, and this watch is okay as far as thickness goes. It's maybe actually a tiny bit thinner than many of the Miyota 8000 watches I've covered, but it's not nearly as thin as the Miyota 9000 series units. And one thing you'll notice that's maybe a little bit unusual with this watch from side on is the fact that actually a lot of the thickness here is constituted of the bezel. It's quite a proud, prominent bezel, this one. Now, obviously, I just generally prefer thinner watches, and I feel like the thinner you can get, the better. And that is one of the things I just pointed out to them when I took a look at the concept of this watch. I thought that bezel just looked maybe a little bit unusually high. Can't tell at all from square on though. Apparently a 40mm watch this. We'll take a look at that in a moment. It's also got a really meaty 200m water resistance rating, and that includes the screw down crown here, which is pretty decent actually. That not bad at all. Quite a smooth action, and you get a screw down crown on the back here. So aquatically, this should be, well, overkill really for a day-to-day watch. You should have zero problems showering or swimming in this. Quite a clean design on the case back there too. By default, these ship on this bracelet here, this stainless steel bracelet, and this one looks pretty good. Seems like we've got solid steel links there, yeah, and I think they are push pins on this one, so not quite as easy to remove as screw links, but quality-wise, these seem pretty good. Not much rattling going on. Also have quick-release solid end links there on the underside, so you can take this off pretty quickly. And what's going on inside the clasp here? We've got a nice milled steel clasp. Not too bad. I think some of that resistance there is just from the stickers. There we go. I think that's cleared now. Let's try that again. Yeah, much, much neater. And wow, yeah, it looks like we've got some sort of adjustable clasp here too. How does this work? I mean, number one, it's nice to see some sort of concealed micro adjustment clasp on a watch at this price. Not even Addy's Dive has that yet, and many of their watches these days are a similar price to this. So I've lobbed this part in because I didn't do a very good job of explaining it. So you can just push the end in like this to select the stopwatch you want. I think there's 3 or 4 options here. And then to reset it or to expand it a bit, you just pull this little lever and then slide it out like that. An overall pretty decent system. Don't think it's quite as easy as some of the glide lock clones I've seen. But to be honest, at this price, if this is the only way it can be manufactured at this sort of budget, any on the flat micro adjustment is appreciated, and I'd say it's just about good enough. Seems fairly stable, at least on the first 3 clicks, and that just leaves you with no obvious holes here in the clasp, which gives you a bit more of a smooth look. So yeah, pretty decent quality-wise that. And what crystal have we got on the top here? Surely this will be sapphire. Yeah, flat sapphire crystal, and they're advertising here a triple AR coating on this. And legibility here isn't bad actually. A little bit above average, I'd say, maybe about a 6 out of 10. It really shows, doesn't it, how much difference the colour of the watch can make in the perceived haziness. This lighter champagne one looks visually clearer, but I'm sure they'll actually be using identical crystals. Now, if we look nice and close here, this watch is pretty clean and detailed, even up close. All applied markers on the dial there. And we'll definitely give this a lume test in a moment because I've got no clue what to expect. Must have unusual hands with a super long thin strip down the centre, and that goes right to the tip pretty much. So interested to see how that stacks up. Do you think this watch looks very good for the price, very premium for the price, but it's not without some bugbears. And aside from the bezel and the aforementioned thickness, we've also got the fact that the design is just a little bit vanilla, certainly towards the safer end of the spectrum, isn't it? That Oyster Perpetual-like look, and the iconography too. Now, I do think the Sestrian wording is okay, and the font on that's pretty good too. I wouldn't change that. But the symbol above it, this kind of shield icon, I can see why they've gone for it. You know, Chester's got a lot of that Roman military heritage, but at the same time, I can't escape the feeling it looks quite a lot like an antivirus logo, doesn't it? Kind of two-tone shield. It's like a symbol I just feel like I've seen before, and to some degree it's the same with this on the crown here. I feel like it's like Kaspersky or something. But obviously my input on that wouldn't have made a difference given this watch was already starting production. And it's not like the symbol itself is ugly or anything actually. Just reminds me of a different product in a way. I still think all of these are fairly good looking though too. Now these are advertised as 40mm online. Let's see how accurate that is. And now this is exactly 40mm on the widest part. Lug to lug on this is pretty short though, only 44.8, and that thickness is getting up there a little bit at 12.65. But that's the case, like I said, with many of these 8000 series Miyotas. Strap, by the way, on this one is 20mm. And you know what? On wrist maybe wears a little more compactly than I expected. And I did tell them this at the time. I said, you know, this won't fit a wrist like mine most likely. My cap on the width is usually around 38mm unless we've got a cartoonishly short lug to lug. But this one definitely wears a little bit smaller than average, I'd say, for a 40mm. Feels more like about a 39 to me. And it certainly looks good on wrist too. Do like the unusual colour with this one. And even on my small 6 1/4 inch arm, you'll see we don't really have any overhang with the lugs there. So it should be quite a versatile shape, this one. I think this watch looks best from this angle, don't you think? Really nice reflective bezel there. Manages to catch my camera light, you can see. But it does play with the light pretty well for such an affordable watch. But I'm tempted to try some of those others too. Here's a quick look at the champagne one. Do like this. Maybe I'm getting a taste for champagne watches, even if I don't drink the stuff. This one probably has the most prominent sunburst of the three. And it also doesn't have the gradient effect on this, which I think suits it actually. I think it keeps it nice and light and clean. And while I'm not a big fan of the kind of icon, it does somewhat suit being on the seconds hand there. You barely notice it and they're still able to fit it in, and fairly flush to the wrist without too many empty gaps. Here's a look at the thickness, by the way. They have one or two troubles with the tighter sleeves here, though I suspect a 9000 series equipped model would be significantly more expensive than this, especially with the current movement shortages we've been having globally, it seems. Bit of a darker blue actually, this one. But yeah, very keen to check this one out under low light. You'll notice here, because we've got those female end links on the bracelet, this one is even able to conform to my wrist, even though really my arm's a bit too small for this watch. So you should get a nice smooth transition regardless of your wrist size there. So they're claiming this is a sapphire crystal, and to check, I'm going to use my special gem tester 2 here. Now when I press the crystal with this magic pen, if it is sapphire, we should see that needle rise all the way into the ruby sapphire section. If not, then, well, they're telling porkies. And no, they are not telling porkies on this occasion. That is a genuine sapphire crystal. Now, as for luminescence, not sure what they advertised on this. I've got fairly big pieces of luminescence, which can help in low light, but brightness is always what we want. So online here, it just says Swiss Superluminova green. But I don't know, to me that looks like a BGW9 or something, doesn't it, with that blue glow? Let's see if that stays when the torch goes out. And no, how peculiar. I think that might be the first time ever where the lume on a watch has looked clearly blue under this UV torch, and then the second it switches off, it does go to green. So yeah, it turns out they weren't lying with that one. Now, as for performance, this is very mediocre, I'd say, and definitely one area where these Chinese brands seem to have the edge, because a lot of their watches, even at this price, have much stronger luminescence than this. But overall, still a pretty well-rounded package, I'd say. If you want to take a closer look at these, you can use the affiliate links in the video description to take a look. And materially, these are really exquisitely made watches for the money, and I struggle to see how they could have done any better really on that front. Just with some of the minor tweaks we've mentioned, I think this could be something extra special.